Welcome to Talking Business. I'm your host, Darcey Edwards with Queen Bee Leadership Training. Talking Business is just that. We are talking business with business leaders, leaders in the community, and those who change their communities with entrepreneurship. This podcast is presented by Xpose Hope as a thank you to the business community. Catch us on all the platforms. Find us, follow us, and review us. Welcome, this is Talking Business, and I'm Darcey Edwards, and today, oh my gosh, we have a two-timer coming back because he was the number one person that people watched and loved. Will Eberhart with Perseverance Marketing. He's here to set your mind at ease and tell you what to do.
If life were so easy. Thank you so much, Darcey.
Welcome. Well, okay, so we were just talking before you got here, before you were sitting down, about use the word marketing. And in our world, especially after COVID, that's kind of changed. The definition necessarily may have changed. Can you give us a definition of what you think that is?
All right. Marketing. As much as things have changed, they have so remained the same, right? And it sounds so cliche, and my parents would love to hear me say that because I sound like them, right?
Right.
You know, the sign of I'm getting older. But marketing is as it always was. The difference are the platforms. But all platforms aren't equal to all businesses.
Right.
So marketing is still an investigative practice of search and of really, a SWOT analysis, right? Success versus opportunities, success versus weaknesses. It still remains the same. But again, the differences are the enticements of the interwebs, right? Of the internet.
The internets.
Everyone wants to be on the internet. Everyone says, oh, there's an opportunity because everyone has a device in their hand. Yes, but every one of those devices and access to the individuals who are holding them comes at a cost. So if you're not competing with the brands who are able to blanket their message across all platforms, how do you use the device in itself to evangelize or broadcast your message?
Right.
And is that the only way, right? If you own a fitness center, unless you start to look at, and then here's the other thing, right? Unless you start to looking at alternative revenue streams, you're trying to get people in the doors to use your treadmill, to use your elliptical, to use your group fitness classes, right? You're trying to get people in the doors. So does it make sense to talk to someone who's 1,000 miles away, who just happens to be scrolling through and like, oh, hey, this is a great gym. I'd love to join. Where are they?
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a practical purpose within all realms of marketing, and understanding where you should be fishing is important.
Absolutely. Know your pond.
Know your pond.
Know your pond. I love that. Well, and that's also the thing that you also were talking about beforehand was, okay, Nike has, I don't know what their budget for marketing is. I'm guessing hundreds of millions of dollars. And, I can't compete with that. Most people can't. And how do you decide where your pond is?
So you hire a professional, number one, right?
You hire Will.
You hire Perseverance Marketing.
That's right.
And you investigate and you ask a series of questions. What is your message? What is your product? What is your capability and your capacity to get your product to your audience?
Right.
Is your product a service? What's your capability of getting your service to your audience? Right? Are you a web designer who can work with virtually anyone, anywhere?
Right.
Or do you have a brick and mortar, sandwich shop where you have to dry pack something in order to send it to Nova Scotia or to New Zealand, right? What is your definitive measure of business and what makes sense to your business? If it doesn't make sense to your business, you should not do it. And some things are, readily evident. Some things you're like, oh, this may sound like a good idea, let me try it, and it may not work, but you can't be afraid to pivot, right? We just come from an entire 2 years of hearing the word pivot, pivot, pivot. Well, I'm a hooper, so I've always pivoted. I've pivoted, reverse pivot, forward pivot, right? So pivot is not it's not a bad word for me, right?
Right, no.
It's actually, how do you get to your destination? You pivot.
Yeah.
You establish a pivot, and then you make a determination from there. If you pick up your pivot and go the wrong direction or, illegally, then you turn the ball over. We don't want to turn the ball over, right?
Right,
We want to
absolutely.
continue scoring. We want to keep forward progress and keep the pedal on the gas, if you will, in order to get to the basket. And then do
Right.
it again.
I love that. I did not play basketball, but I know I picked up 85% of what you were throwing down, and I'm like, just make the basket.
Yes.
Just make the basket.
That's the goal.
Right?
Right?
Always win. So, as a marketer, when is it time to hire you? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, it's just so expensive. There's no way I could possibly, but it's more expensive not to. Mm-hmm. So when is that time for our business owners here to say, I need professional help. I'm really good at making that sandwich. I'm really good at that experience. I have no concept of what to do with myself day to day.
Well, great question, because there's what practically happens and what should happen, right? And in most cases, people wait until they're struggling, and then they throw it as a last resort. And then there are so many things that are promising for marketing, right?
Right.
Marketing is the plan. It's not just the action. It's the investigatory process, right? It's the investigation. It's looking at the landscape and saying, where do I stand to be most successful? And then how do I get there?
Right.
And through that, you find tools, you find advertising tools, you find platforms in which to advertise on. And you start to investigate those, but you also weigh them against your profit margin, right? So how much money do I have to spend over here in order to attract this? How little money do I have to spend in order to attract that, right? How do I rely on my organic message through my organic network in order to start receiving some of these proceeds? And as I expand, then I start to build to it. So in essence, as you're planning your business, you should bring in a marketer. If your business is already flourishing or your business is already established, then the time is now.
Right.
The time is now.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to do bigger, better business. Everyone wants to do more business, right? How do you become more successful? Is there a
Right.
such thing as more successful? Of course there is. But what is the plan to get you there? You can get to a point, even if you're working out, where you lose weight and you hit a plateau and you're not seeing any changes anymore. In golf, guys get to a level where Tiger Woods has seen a tremendous amount of success during his career, and then says, well, I want to change my swing. And for the next 5-6 years, went through this spiral of relearning his swing in order to get better, right? And so it's
excellent.
always a thing. Well, how do you get better? Well, what happens is those people, they go to see a coach. They go to a better coach. You leave your team, go to a better team. I want an opportunity to win because there's a better chance of me winning. There's a better mind at the helm. And so it's the same thing in business. So you bring someone in. Now, if you are established, if you are setting the groundwork, well, then you bring them in at the time where you're trying to figure out everything else. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to be established. What business am I going to, I know the business. Where is the business going to be?
Right.
What am I doing? How's the website being built? Because your messaging, although it's changeable, it still needs to be important at the helm and at the forefront. And with that, as I ramble on, I feel.
I can listen to you all day. He does voiceovers, by the way, BT dub. So I'm enthralled. No, you're not rambling. You're doing great.
No, I appreciate it. But a long way of just saying there is no perfect time. The perfect time is always now.
Right.
And if you're getting started, the perfect time is at the beginning. If you already started, then the perfect time is now. But do not wait until you're underwater. Do not wait until you're sinking, because then nothing will ever be good enough.
Good, because you're already in that drowning.
Right, and you're looking for
Landscape,
a scapegoat.
Yeah.
You're looking for a red
That's
or a
good.
blue pill, right? And then so as soon as something doesn't work, it's, there
Right.
goes the baby with the bathwater.
Right, it's time.
Right,
So marketing is time.
it is.
It is not a pill.
No,
Unfortunately, it's just like weight loss. There is no pill that's magically going to make you 30 pounds lighter in a week.
yes.
Highly illegal, I'm pretty sure. But you did bring up a word, and it always comes up in these conversations about network and the network and your network and networking. What are your philosophies on the new landscape of networking? It's not new landscape, finding your pond.
Well, you always want to find your evangelists, right? You want to find the people who are invested in your business as much as you are from
Right.
the point of believing in your process or believing in your business in itself. And network is in varying factions,
Right.
right? Again, if we go back to the idea of a small business owner, a solopreneur, a micro business, they have to understand who their competition is. And when you're a local mom and pop shop, your competition, if you're selling t-shirts, your competition is not Nike,
Right.
right?
Or Target.
Or Target,
Yeah.
or the Gap. That's not your competition. That may be whom you hope to emulate,
Right.
but you are not competing against them. You do not have the funds nor the supply chain to compete with a brand
Right.
that's putting X amount of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into their marketing platform, their marketing capabilities. So you have to look at it from a different angle, and you have to identify and understand who is your target audience, where you exist, and how do you evangelize individuals to either get to that target audience or for you to be within that target audience yourself, right?
Right.
And so now when you start thinking about networking, it's the idea of how much of yourself are you willing to give to your audience locally in order to get them to invest in your product.
Right.
Now here's the problem with that.
Okay, listen up. Gather around, children.
Gather around, get a little closer.
Will's talking.
The problem with that is, as a solopreneur, as a micro business, you wear all of the hats. You're the marketer, you're the cook, you're the stenographer,
Right.
you're the accountant, you're the bookkeeper, you're the everything. You open, you close, you serve, you do everything. And so when you now try to focus on one other thing, by the way, there's no such thing as multitasking. There's no such thing as multitasking. People say that all the time. The only thing that you can do as a multitasker is walk and breathe. If you stop doing something to start doing something else, you're no longer multi.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. I like to think I am, but I know I'm not. I actually fundamentally know that's a true statement.
Yes.
Yes.
So the idea
Yeah.
of trying to multitask in your business, you're going to have to stop something to do something else.
Yes.
And what happens is things get left undone. They get done partially, or everything gets done at a minimal level.
Right.
And so you don't focus. So when you think about now, how do you bring in a marketer, or why would you bring in a marketer? Well, number one is to alleviate the stress of trying to do 7 jobs in a day. You
Right.
don't have the time. And if you do make the time, well, something else is suffering for it. Your family time, your health, right? Something at the very least is suffering. So when you start to think about how you market your business and to what audience you're marketing, you have to weigh it against all of the other things you're doing as well and start to make sense of, does it make sense for me to continue down this path where I know I have so many other things to do? My business is suffering, or my business isn't where I want it to be.
Right.
And yet I'm working on all of these other things. And that becomes a challenge in itself. But of course, if you're willing to do those things, then by all means, right? Then go ahead and suffer the consequences. And the consequences can be grave or they can be minimal, but there will be consequences. Something will be left undone.
Right. Absolutely. So you alleviate stress.
Absolutely.
And so we're in a health club, ironically. And all of the guests before you were in that realm of dealing, that's what they coached in, or they were massage therapists. So, and coaching somebody with, the owner of Hawthorne Farms, Heidi, she has a degree in stress and trauma management.
Oh,
So, but you were just that you're here today.
yes.
I love it. But it's so, that's the thing I think that's come out of COVID is that maybe more of a red flag of taking care of yourself. So when you're a new business or you're a business that's kind of like starting out, part of that oxygen that you would put on yourself is taking that mask and giving it to someone for them to take care of that in your business. And being very thoughtful and mindful, if I'm re-saying what you're saying, in where you're giving your focus to.
Right.
So don't be everywhere be cautious where you go to network, because it's time. Networking is time. It's not your magic pill. And everybody thinks it is, but it's not. And just being able to manage that time to find that pond where you belong.
Yeah, and it's tough because network is important because you want to make sure you're evangelizing your message from your point of view and your perspective.
Right.
And it's difficult to find someone who cares as much about your business, who's as passionate as much about your business as you are. And that's also important when it comes to hiring outside help, right? You don't want to hire someone who just says, oh, yeah, just do this and you'll be fine. You'll get 1 million views. And you're like, all right, I don't have to do anything. Versus the person who says, okay, why did you start this business? What was the intention? And investigating that theory of your why and weighing it against where you are currently, and again, weighing it against where you want to be, what your goals are.
Right.
And then setting a direction from there. You can go out and speak to 1 million people, but it may not be the people who are going to service your business.
Right.
Right? Or you can go and speak to them and they may have someone in their network who would benefit, but how do you get to that person directly without relying on them? Because as they receive, I read something the other day that says the average individual receives 754 messages, outward messages, just on television alone, right? Now, that was a stat that was from about 10 years ago.
Oh, so probably triple that amount?
Maybe
At
even
least.
quadruple,
Yeah.
because that's just watching television. And television, we know, is a 30-minute television show has probably like 4 or 5 3-minute commercial interruptions.
Right.
So that's then. You could just look around and see the amount of people who are just hunched over because they're on their phone doing this.
Right, while they're watching TV.
Yes. So now you think about the level of
Right.
commercials. How do you separate yourself? What is the distinction? And then where do you compete? Again, financially, right? You have to do something that targets your audience in a specific and intentional manner that speaks directly to them, more importantly, to them than to you. And that comes, again, at a cost of time and a cost of money. You hire a professional to save you time and money on your way to making money.
Right. I love that. And it's so funny because people I would say this all the time. They'll trip over $1 to save a quarter. And it's like, okay, so let me help you here. You just spent this on that. Let's do the math. And that's, okay, and I will be honest, I really don't love math, except in commissions. I love it. And I like compound, interest. I like the good math. The ones that are scary or whatever, I make my husband do. And, but that's his answer every time. Does it pencil? How much, do the math on that. And I'm always surprised when I talk to people and they told me what they've spent and done. I'm like, oh my gosh, you literally could have done this over here for, you would have had that person take care of that for you. And so tell us about some successes that you've had recently. Like, who's one of your clients where you just like, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. You're like me, I think, in that when you see people win, it's your fire, right?
Absolutely.
Your favorite drug of choice.
Absolutely.
And I know that. And so share like a success of a business. You don't have to say names or anything, but just kind of like the story behind it, because I want people to get that, oh my gosh, that's really actually, I should call him because he knows. And sometimes people they're like fearful of calling somebody that's, they're a marketing professional. They just know so much more than me. And it's like, but we need those people. Yes. Right?
Yeah. No, I absolutely, that's the fire behind even doing what I do, right?
Right.
the idea that I get to use my intellect on a day-to-day basis is fun for me.
Right.
But it doesn't matter unless there's an aha moment, right? And that aha moment is usually the client. So I have a client, I began working with a coaching client who runs a service for law firms. And he's a lawyer by trade. He had this great concept where he had his aha moment and said, I can make this a business. And we sat down and he was skeptical.
Right.
He's like, oh, who's this guy? Here he is. What is he going to tell me? And we started from the bottom. Hey, why you do this? And he gave me his origin story. And I said, okay, so what's your business? And he spoke for the next 22 minutes. And I didn't know what his business was.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually encountered that quite often myself.
What he explained to me was totally opposite of his origin story.
Interesting.
And I said, well, let's bring it back. You told me that you started this business based on X, Y, and Z. So how you've gotten away from that? You've convoluted your message by overthinking where you want to go. So let's scale all the way back. And we started with just a tagline. Basics.
Right?
Let's get your tagline. If you can surmise your business in a 1 to 2 sentence, in 1 to 2 sentences, then you can explain it to anyone. And now there's no more reason for fluff.
Yes.
Here's what I do, here's why I do it, and here's how your life can be better off for what it is that we do, right? You have a problem. I can help you solve that problem, and your life will be better off for having me solve that problem.
Exactly.
Done deal.
Love that. Okay, so in that, I'm going to recap. Sorry, we might be here a while. We're going to cut the fluff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think also you were saying he overthought so much, and people they get in fear of what they're presenting because they aren't super confident, so they keep talking.
Yes.
And I'm like, I've actually said this, I'm like, stop talking. Just stop. Just stop. It's okay. We're going to breathe. No, let's say that again without all the fluff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happens when people start a business, or like during COVID, a lot of people started businesses because they were forced to be home, and they're like, I hate my job anyway, and I can do this, and I've always wanted to, and now's a great time to do it. But then they get in the business part of it, now that the masks are off, like, how do I explain this? And
Right.
so I love that. Simple. Keep it simple, sis.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Or sir. Keep it
Yes.
simple, sir. And just getting rid of that fluff, I think a lot of times is just fundamental. Basics, clean lines, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Modern,
it's the
clean
hardest
line.
thing to do.
Yes.
Right?
I concur. Yep.
Because when you get passionate, it's like trying to explain why you love someone. You start going, what's the root, right? And it's difficult. And so with this gentleman, that was the first thing. Let's simplify your understanding of your business. That will now allow you to build on the other steps, right? Because now you can share it. And then so as he's doing that, he's like, oh my God, this has opened up so much for me. And then of course, next, we worked on pricing.
Yeah. Okay, so, all right. Okay, kids, gather around again. So we're going to talk about the fun thing of pricing, because it's so fun. But people they will so undervalue themselves. I've seen this, you've seen this, that literally when people will sometimes tell me what their price point is, I'll go, oh, you probably don't know what you're doing. Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to, it's like that doesn't make any sense. Why would that be that pricing? Mm-hmm. And so talk about pricing. Tell us the story.
You have to unload your financial baggage from growing up.
Yes.
You have to get rid of it. If you're going to run a business, you have to run a business without this overarching impact of, is it enough? Should I have some more? Right?
Right. Yeah.
What does it cost you? If you're stressing out by virtue of running your business, if your business is successful and you're not making any money, well, you probably don't have a marketing issue.
Right.
probably have a pricing issue.
Yeah, right?
Raise your prices,
Yeah.
watch your business flourish.
Yeah.
But don't try to look to bring in more people and say, I want to keep it here because this is the standard. Whose standard? It's your business, it's your skill set. Obviously, if people are supporting you, then there's something off.
Right?
Now, if you're not getting any business, then maybe your prices are too high.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
But there's a fundamental difference. But we get nervous because we don't want to lose the opportunity for a client.
Right.
You can't lose something you don't have.
Absolutely.
I didn't lose my Ferrari.
Right, I didn't have it. I didn't like I parked it in the wrong spot. What Ferrari?
Dude, where's my car? I didn't lose it. You
Right.
cannot lose something you don't have. So you don't stand to lose from gaining something,
Right.
right? You stand to gain if you don't approach your business in a practical sense that makes sense to your bottom line.
Right.
You also don't want to burn yourself out,
Right, exactly.
right? So in some cases, with the case with this gentleman, he's been in the practice already and he understands and he's working with other law firms. So the conversation was a lot around, well, I don't want to affect their ability to make a margin. That's not your problem.
Absolutely. Okay, so somebody else. Yeah, it's none of your business. It's not your problem. Your problem is to do the service.
Mm-hmm.
You're not concerned with what they're doing. That's not your. Thank you.
No, you
That's
cannot run a
huge.
marathon looking behind you.
I want to help, but I want to help them.
Who's helping you?
Right, exactly. And
But you-
that I think is so good. So we need 14 more of these. We should every month have a Will.
Do a monthly
Come
segment.
sit at the knee of Will, and let's chat about some things that, because I see that and that's also presenting how you're going to increase that price.
Mm-hmm.
I get the letters all the time, and it's so apologetic and long, which I'm like super ADD. So after 2 sentences, I'm out anyway. And I've actually sent people back stuff. I'm like, this is way too long. I have no idea what you just said. Just say it in 2 sentences. But the way they present that price increase, and it's super apologetic-y, makes me go, well, why are you even doing that? Or, okay, so are you not as good as you were before? Because you're apologizing.
Or what's going to happen next?
Right.
Are you going to upcharge me after I sign up?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not confident. You're not definitive. So how could you expect me to be confident? Totally.
Right. So just change the price and move on with your day.
That's it. That's it. Do the math. Do the upfront math. How much
Right.
time does it cost me? What do I stand to gain? How many of these do I need to do in order to make a living? And then say, okay, right? You're the expert in your field. You
Right.
know how much the flour costs. You know how much the sugar costs. You know how much the electricity costs for the oven, or if it's how much the wood costs, whatever the case may be. And then you know how much time you're putting into gathering those ingredients, mixing them, perfecting them, and then baking them, and then letting it cool. And then you apply a number to that. And then you sell your cake. You don't sell it for the price of a bag of flour. You'll never make any money.
Yeah. I think
Right.
that's a whole segment on its own. We should do a workshop. Ooh, I just came up with an idea. Maybe a 2-dayer.
I like it.
Maybe we'll have lunch. Maybe we can have it here. I don't know. We'll let you know. But okay, so to wrap it up, because we could do this all day long. What are 3 tips for our unmasking? I call it the great unmasking and equalizer. So we have a new type of, so we have inflation. We have consumers doing different things or coming out of that virus thing. And then we have, the possibility of World War, which does weigh on people's hearts and it comes up on things. What are 3 tips for business owners today to kind of take away from this and kind of implement?
Tip number 1 is be an expert in what you do, right? Mm-hmm. Which means let your expertise shine. If you are great at putting icing on the cake, then you do that. Let someone else do the baking.
Right,
So
love
tip
that.
number 1 is do what you are expert at. Tip number 2, don't be afraid to charge accordingly for what it is you do.
Yes.
Like, probably the most important, if not as equally important.
Okay, so tip number 3.
And tip number 3, run your race. You cannot run a marathon looking behind you. You're probably going to trip. Run your race and run it to the best of your ability. Pay attention to your surroundings, but set your sights on the goal.
Excellent. I love that. Okay, I love having you here. You're
pleasure.
so much fun to interview, and I just get so much out of it. It's kind of selfish, but I love it. Thank you.
I appreciate
Again.
it. Thank you.
Oh.
So amazing to be here.
All right.
Hi, my name is Betty Campbell. I'm with Xpose Hope. Thanks for listening to our podcast, Talking Business. I want to talk to you today about COVID and the life. Did you think that when COVID hit, trafficking went down? No, actually it skyrocketed. Now there were a lot more people who were victims who were easy to victimize. Won't you help us pull them out? Get in touch with us at xposehope.com or check us out on Facebook or Instagram.
Thank you for listening to Talking Business, brought to you by Xpose Hope. We can be found on all of your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, iTunes, all of them. Also, be sure to like us, share us, and leave a comment. Who do you want to hear from? We want to know.